here today to talk to you about another Man Booker longlisted book, which is Sleeping on Jupiter by Anuradha Roy. And as usual, I am not going to discuss spoilers within the book, though I will allude to something that happens, but you find that out very, very early on in the first, 2 chapters, but otherwise I'm not going to ruin the plot for anyone who hasn't read it before. I am going to be discussing themes in it and what I think the author set out to do, how successfully I think they managed it. This book does deal with sexual violence and I will be discussing that within this review, so if that is not something that you want to listen to, then I'm just warning you now, a trigger warning, I will be discussing that. This book is about a variety of characters, the main one being Nomi, who was travelling back to India from Norway, having left there when she was 12, and the other 3 being older female characters who have lived in India and are travelling to the temple town that Nomi is also travelling to. There are a few other minor characters in here as well, but those are the 4 main ones. There's also a character who is a tour guide around the temple too. The narrative switches from third person to first person, the first person being when Nomi is remembering her past. So it is split between the present day and memories, and the past memories are in the first person, whereas the rest of the novel is in third person, as if Nomi is giving a voice to her past self, which she hasn't had before because she is recovering her memories. The book opens very violently with a young girl witnessing the death of her father being murdered. She is taken on a boat to an ashram, so it's a place where this godlike figure is rescuing young girls, orphan girls, feeding them, educating them, and is seen as this wonderful Samaritan by the community. He's doing everything in the name of God, but actually it's a cover for something really awful that is going on there. The girls are abused. It is nothing to do with religion at all, but he does build himself up to be godlike. There's lots of imagery to do with that. There's lots of mirages and smoke and mirrors with regard to this book. So you have characters who are doing things in the name of religion which has nothing to do with religion, and then you have characters like Nomi who, after the first initial chapter, which is set in first person in the past, opens with Nomi travelling on the train in India and talking to these 3 older Indian women. They ask her where she's from and she says she's from Norway. So as a reader, you read this thinking, oh, Nomi is on a train in India, she's from Norway. So you're imagining this character who is Scandinavian, and it's only later that you discover actually she's not, she's Indian, and she is the person who is trying to recover her memory. She is the child at the beginning, the 12-year-old, and that's not really a spoiler, you find that out at the very beginning, that she is this young girl from India who then moved to Norway and is now back again. But it plays with our perceptions, and it reminded me of a scene in Ali Smith's There But For There, which is a really wonderful scene where a young character called Ruth talks about how characters in books, she knows when they're black because the author tells her that they're black. So she knows that Hermione Granger isn't black because J.K. Rowling didn't tell her so, but she knows that Angelina Johnson is because J.K. Rowling told her that she was. It's a great commentary on race within books, which is really interesting. So this plays with that sort of idea as well at the beginning, and characters also have that problem. They meet Nomi if they've been talking to her via email, and they have this image in their head of what she's going to look like, and then she turns up and they're still looking for her and she's like, hey, I'm here. And they're like, oh, I didn't see you. So we have these conflicting pairs between our perceptions, our expectations and reality, and these binary pairs run throughout the book as well, with things like sun and moon and the heat and the cold, and the sand and the sea. There's lots of pairs throughout that reflect different emotional states. For instance, Naomi travelled from the heat of India to the darkness of Norway and is coming back again, and she's doing that because she wants to recover her memories of this 12-year-old girl who we saw at the beginning, who saw all these atrocities and then was later abused. She wants to remember, so she has come from the darkness of Norway to the lightness of India, and it's that play on enlightenment because she is travelling to a temple town where people are worshipping and also trying to reach enlightenment and all of those kind of discussions. So it's a play on that word. And whereas Nomi is trying to recover her memories, one of the 3 ladies who is travelling on the train with her, Guri, she has dementia, so she is losing her memories. So there's that gain and loss. Nomi is also in the temple town to make a documentary. She's actually doing that. That's not just a cover, which also reflects what she's doing in her real life. Obviously piecing together the pictures, looking at everything through a lens, examining everything, trying to pick the fact from the fiction surrounding her and her memories. Now, as I said, sexual violence runs throughout this book, predominantly with Nomi's memories of when she was younger, but also other characters suffer from it too. So Nomi, when she remembers the ashram that she was part of with all the other girls, all of the girls always have their hair tied in plaits, like rope. And there's lots of images of birds in cages. She says that all the girls were washed down like birds in the rain, and the godlike figure who lords over this ashram is always painting animals on the walls of his room like he owns them. The girls in the ashram are often referred to as boat girls, so as water creatures, so this imagery of water again, the heat of India and the water, because they were brought on a boat to the ashram. So they're referred to almost as like other, like they came from the sea, almost like they're sea creatures and therefore can be treated as less than human. The quote that says, if you fish a woman out from the water, you can either lay her or sell her, but if you fish a man out of the water, what use is that? Throw him back in. So early on in this very beginning, the first chapter, Nomi gets her ears pierced by a woman at the ashram who doesn't ask her permission first, and she uses a needle to do it, and there's this image of her pushing this needle into her ear and causing blood to spurt out of it, and Nomi's going, no, I don't want you to do that. So this imagery of sexual violence there, of non-consent. The ashram is also like the Garden of Eden. There is a garden with a tree in the middle, and at one point Nomi is scolded for stealing some fruit. So there's this loss of innocence, this women who are trying to gain knowledge about the situation. She wants to know why she's there, she wants to know how she can break free, and that is reflected by sexuality. She's punished sexually for wanting to know more about her situation. And as I said, the guy who lords over the ashram is a godlike figure, so it's this warped religious thing. As a quote says, Guruji sometimes spoke Hindi with us and sometimes English. People said he'd never been to school, yet miraculously he could understand whichever language his devotees spoke in and could speak them equally well. There were many stories about Guruji. He said that he had divine powers even when he was a child. He could turn into a cat or a horse or a wolf and then come back to human form again. He allows the girls to think like him as some kind of other, and that gets him all kinds of like awful favors from them. It's really, really not pleasant. There is lots of imagery like the Garden of Eden, etc., and that image of Nomi having her ears pierced without her consent throughout the book to reflect sexuality. So one of the older women, Latika, she dyes her hair red, and she says that even though it comes from a bottle, it reflects the redness inside of her. There's a lot of imagery like that referring indirectly or directly to female genitalia as red. So that coming of age, that menstruation, for instance, when Nomi first gets her period, she's locked up in a building because that's seen as like some kind of curse, and dirty, and she has to be kept away from everyone, but also brutal, and that image of being forced and of bleeding is constantly there, that aggression towards women. And in the middle of the book there is a scene where Nomi has a very violent memory of her past, and it is a reflection on a scene in Jane Eyre in the Red Room. So in this book, when Nomi has the memory, she feels like she's encased in a red room and she can't get out, and she's having all of these violent memories and she feels like she's losing her mind. And at the beginning of Jane Eyre, when Jane has a tantrum and her aunt thinks she's not acting like a lady, she is locked up in this red room, this room with wet red walls, which she believes is haunted. She can't get out, and she screams and she hears voices inside of her head. And yeah, so that is a real reflection on that. Also, that aspect in this book, this little chapter with that violent memory, is kind of reminiscent of the time passing scene into The Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, because the narrative is very different and it's a way to almost skim over these really awful happenings, which I thought was very interesting. So this image of heat, of redness, which is reflected in India and juxtaposed with things like Norway, is counteracted by images of the sea, which all of the characters yearn to get towards. They love the sea because they are drifters, and it's cool and it takes them away from their burning memories. Like this imagery of burning is present throughout, and that's why you have this cover, I think, which is kind of like a Georgia O'Keeffe painting, you know, when you think it's a flower but actually it's a vagina. So here you have Jupiter, like a satellite shot of a storm on Jupiter, but actually if you look at it, it is also an abstract vagina right there. I never thought I'd be saying that on this channel, but there we go, an abstract blue vagina. So this is not red, this is cold. It's mimicking the sea that the women yearn for, that they want calm, they want peace, they want some kind of resolution for some inner turmoil that they have experienced. One of the male characters in this book, he carves a boat out of wood every year and sets it on the sea in memory of his dad, and he says that he could make one for Nomi and set her free on the waves and name it after her. And she says, oh no, I'm not really a boat person, but I like planes. Could you make me a plane? And he says, oh, but planes don't have names, they have numbers. So it strips her of her identity. She's not a person, she's not a name, she is a number. And that sums up how she's felt about herself for a lot of her life. There's also a madman in this village, this temple town, who keeps on planting a dead stick and watering it and then uprooting it and moving it along, and that reflects how Naomi feels, because she feels uprooted most of the time, like she isn't grounded. She yearns for water, as I said, the sea. She yearns for growth, for peacefulness. So there are lots of interesting points of discussion in this book. There were some things that really frustrated me about it. I did think that there were instances of characters who have deformity or some kind of birth mutation depicted as villains, and it's a trope that I really can't stand. I think it's really out of date and offensive, and I wish that we could get over it, actually, in film and in books. I'm through with the Captain Hooks of this world. It really just, it annoys me a lot. The violence in this book is very powerful, it's very sudden, and it comes in waves, which reflects the imagery of the sea. It also reflects how memories work, because they come back to us in ebbs and flows. But overall, I didn't particularly think this book fulfilled what I wanted it to fulfill. I thought that the characters became quite hyperbolic towards the end, and I just wasn't very satisfied with it. I think there are lots of interesting things to discuss with regard to it, but overall, it didn't really work for me, which was a shame, because as I said, there were some points where I thought, well, this is brilliant, and then there were some points where I was just like, oh no, I'm not really sure. I know that some people love this, which is why literature is great, because we're all going to love different things, and obviously it's on the Man Book Along list, so lots of people do love it. But for me, overall, I was just left wanting more for these characters, because I did feel quite close to some of them. So yes, those are my thoughts. If you have read this book, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts if you can, without leaving too many spoilers, in case people are reading this who haven't yet read it. I will speak to you guys soon. I'm currently reading Saturn Island, so that is the next full review video that I will be making. As always, I will link other reviews down below and links to the Man Book Vlogger playlist if you would like to see videos from other people who are also making videos about the prize. I will speak to you guys later. Lots of bookish love. Bye.